Hello and welcome to a new Manu's podcast. Here is your host Manu, and this is a podcast where I talk about random things or things of interest, news, or something that I have in my mind. And today I'm gonna talk about a podcast that I've recently seen. It is basically an interview where Andrew Huberman interviews Timothy Ferriss. And it's a 3 hours and 50 minutes long almost interview. So I'm gonna try to summarize it for you in like 10 minutes or less or more. Hopefully no more. And there is a lot to talk about in those 3 hours. There is so much information, and I really suggest you to go and watch it yourself if you're curious about any of the things that I'm talking about. Luckily there are also the timestamps, so you should be able to find more or less when they're talking about a particular topic. And so Timothy, who is Timothy Ferriss, or Tim, is an American entrepreneur, is an investor, is an author, is a podcaster, and a lifestyle guru. So he does a lot of stuff, not the usual thing, not the typical work from 9 to 5. Definitely, it does all sort of things, and is so active. Like, it's very apparent to everyone. And one of the first things or topics that he talk about is since he's an investor, how can he find good ideas, and why is always been that successful with his own ideas. And Timothy basically says, well, I don't really come out with my own ideas. I usually, whenever I have something of interest, I see not something which might be of interest to me, I usually go and talk with the experts, and I always have some sort of one-to-ones and talk with them as a friend and see what they think about something that they've been working on recently. And then I always go and try to ask them, what do you think this is gonna be? Well, how can you stop thinking about what it's achievable or not. Imagine that you would do this technology or this thing that you're working on in different ways. How would you do it? What do you achieve? What do you think it can happen? And let yourself go. And it does this kind of trick or question with more people, more expertise, and if he finds that there are more and more people sort of saying the same thing, is usually like, okay, this is something that I should probably invest in, and this is probably a good idea. And that's why he thinks he's been that successful. But then, we try to go, during the podcast, they try to go a little bit deeper, and why is such a high achiever. And, one of the things is that he has, his way of living is very particular. So he basically does things like constant journaling, a lot of workouts, he keep track of things, and then he sets up rules that he really follows for his life, and he tried to get better basically every year, at every iteration, every time. And all these things together, they help each other. So let's go step by step. So since he journals himself every day, it's very easy for him to sort of understand, for example, if in 1 year he has done more positive things rather than negative things. And if he's done negative things, is like, well, why I'm doing these negative things? And you notice that he does stuff during the year, and then he understand what is the result of it, and then like, okay, for the next year I'm gonna be doing less negative things and do more positive things. Very simple way. Or he also thinks in a weekly manner. He has somewhere a perfect week, and then he's like, okay, how can I do less? I can, he wrote down in a calendar probably what is the perfect week, and he's like, okay, my week is not exactly like the perfect week, but how can I get a little bit closer to what I would like my week to be? And so he has, he puts from 3 to 4 eating, then workout from 6 to 7, things like that, and try to go for it. Um, then is like, how do you grow? How do you do? So they're talking about how he follows diets, for example, and that's quite interesting. So this was like kind of a small story that tells how he thinks. Sort of anecdote. And what he says is basically, if you ever want to follow a diet, keep the rules very simple. You know why? Because otherwise you're gonna outsmart yourself, and then you're not gonna do the thing that you wanted to do in the first place. So, create your diet, put it extremely simple, and every time you want to do something, just read the diet, follow the rule. If you don't do it. If the thing doesn't follow the rule, don't do it. And that's kind of interesting. Then he goes on to talk about social media stuff, which is very he says something that I never thought of. And social media is there and basically distracts you all the time, and the distraction is actually very disruptive for the productivity of a person. And basically says, if you keep thinking about different kind of things and you keep getting distracted, then the context switch is actually very heavy for you. It's not easy. You're wasting time basically. And so just avoid social media apps. And in fact, it doesn't have them. And then he says, the thing is, I don't have them because I know that I'm not gonna have the strength to resist from them. If I start opening them, I'm gonna scroll for 10, 20, 30 minutes on my feed. And you know why? Because these things have been built by companies where they put billions to develop these sort of things. So the data scientists behind social media have been so clever that they know exactly how to take your attention and keep it there. So that's why it's like I don't even have them on my phone, because I know that I'm gonna fall into it. And so that kind of resonates with the idea, keep things simple. Just remove the app, just don't eat this kind of thing, because otherwise, I'm not that smart to resist it basically. Otherwise, or I'm gonna smart myself. So this idea, I'm not that smart, is quite interesting for a person that has been so successful. Then they start talking about something that is quite interesting, is some sort of he starts to talk about some sociopathic behavior. That's quite interesting, because you have Andrew Huberman and then you have Timothy. And Tim is basically saying, if you have an idea or you want to do something, before doing it, just think about, if I cannot tell anyone about this, would I do it or not? And if he says, the answer is no, I wouldn't do it, then probably it's not something that he wants to do. Now, this kind of question is basically there to tell you, are you doing this thing to show off, or actually because you believe in it? And somehow Andrew doesn't understand that. Like, I don't understand why some people would do that. Obviously we are doing things because they're important, not because we want to show them around. Or maybe we don't really pick important friends, that's also another example, because they're important. Like, I don't understand why you want to be a friend of an important or famous person, which is kind of similar to what Tim was saying. And Tim, there are people that do things or become friends of others just because they're gonna become more famous because of that, or they're gonna be more known, and that's quite interesting. So then they start talking about something else, which is, at some point in his life, Tim was like, I should start taking myself less serious. And that's why I started to do I'm gonna change music if I can. Okay, I should start doing less serious thing because I should start doing less serious things because he noticed that he was too much into what he was doing all the time, and so by doing something that was less serious, it would be less would just take it a little bit easier, maybe, because it's already a person of success. Why should do more? And so he basically wrote a book called The Cock Punch something, which is basically the title was supposed to be funny, and then it's like, I'm doing this just to collect money, and then I use all this money in charity, or I think in some organization for research. And the thing is, weirdly enough, when he started to do this not serious book, he took it very seriously, and he really explored the concept from the end to the beginning, and from the beginning to the end. And somehow he overdid it anyway, but then he was aware that he was doing it because the point was, it was working on not serious stuff. And surprisingly, he actually sold out all the books, and then he put the money, for research. And that was so weird. Andrew actually was really inspired by it. He was really incredibly surprised by the success that this book has had and the incredible good impact that he had on research. So that was a very interesting take. And then something that they also went through is something related to the childhood of Tim. So apparently he was I'm not gonna go through that, but basically didn't have a nice childhood, and this also, I think, it really changed his life, obviously. And he also had, as a result, very negative thoughts. And so we said, I said before that, during the interview, he goes in detail that he keeps track of everything. He journals stuff. He does a workout. He writes everything down. And it's kind of interesting that he did the same thing to basically commit suicide. He said, I had written down all the steps that I was supposed to be doing to do it, and then somehow I didn't do it. He says that something happened and he got distracted by a person or a friend, and then he didn't do it. But it's kind of that was very strong moment. And then he says, well, I'm here, and I decided to instead go to the other direction, and instead I'm gonna try to be open with it. In fact, the reason he's talking about in the podcast, and I feel I can talk about it, is because he actually created a public post in the past where he just writes down his experience with mental health, depression and everything. And then he decided to basically write a book I think he was creating a blog. And if you look on Google how to commit suicide, you're gonna find as first result his result, basically the post or a page that he made, and where he basically says, do not do it, it's not worth it, which is kind of interesting. If in fact, if you look for particular kind of wording in Google, you're gonna find particular kind of results, which they're gonna be positive, let's say. Think about it and everything. And yeah, so that was it in a nutshell. I'll try to make it as good as possible. And something that really struck me, and I'm just gonna end with it, is that something that probably a lot of us have to understand. And when you hear it, you're like, I should really when you hear something from a person of success, you try to get inspiration from him. Whatever he says, you try to reinterpret it in a way that you say how this is gonna be gonna bring success to me, and or gonna make my life a little bit better. And something that he says is like, the truth is, most of the things that we do are actually not that important. And that kind of resonated with me, because yeah, that's what kind of feels like at times. I use my time with a lot of crap, and I'm like, why am I doing this? I never really think about it, but when I hear that, I'm like, do I feel that what I'm doing is important? And obviously it's like, what is important? That's another kind of question, but it's kind of, if it hits, then there is something behind. So that was me. Try to summarize a 3 hours and 30 minutes long interview in less than 10 minutes, but it didn't succeed. And I hope that you enjoyed, and if you really like my take on it, and you're like, oh, is it actually what they're saying, just go through the interview. I'm gonna put the link of the YouTube video in the description. So said that, thanks so much, and see you the next time. Bye.